While the Hana Association was a tough prospect for the library, what is coming next will be far worse to deal with, and much larger in scale. The story picks up with a few knocks off the front door of the library. This went unanswered. And then the door was broken through, revealing the Reverberation Ensemble, who had finally decided to break into the library. Bremen made animal noises that could be translated to, "Thanks for the breakthrough!" Pluto replied, "Knock, and the door shall open." Elena remarks on how stupid strong Greta was. Greta seeing it as similar as cooking. A test of endurance. No, Greta. Eating spicy food is a test of endurance. This is breaking and entering. Elena didn't know what to make of this, although she was diplomatic about it. Argalia jokingly cautioning them as they're going to frighten the residents of the library. They might end up hiding. They're introducing the whole Reverberation Ensemble, so they should be polite. Then Philip thought that they'd turn them away if they're too noisy. Tanya wanted to break in and wreck them. Oswald was impressed by the library, now that he's seen it himself. Eileen commented that he led a circus in a humble tent for some time. He thanks the Reverberation Ensemble for changing that. To step out of the tent filled with the musty scent of flowers. Tanya complained about his antsy tactics, as he almost got one of them pulped. Oswald said that he wasn't in his right mind at the time. He thought that she was performing with him. Right mind? Oswald, even the best psychologists of Arkham Asylum wouldn't be able to help you get to your right mind. Pluto thought that it was truly serendipitous that they all walked the same path in the end. Eileen felt the same. Argalia thanked them, although he should be thanking them, as he couldn't do this alone. He questioned why no one was there to greet them. Bremen made noises which were probably a translation of, "Yeah, where the are they?" Tanya thought that they wimped out and hid behind a shelf. Then Angela appeared, along with Roland, and she was most irate with the Reverberation Ensemble, asking if they were insane due to them breaking through forcefully. Well, at least 3 of them are insane. As for some of the others, that's debatable. Roland considered them bursting through the front door as a first layer. Pluto theorized that this was a possible indication that the library was close enough to the physical realm to be interacted with from the outside. Elena commented that they knocked several times. Angela basically told them that if they wrap their fist on the door and they don't get an answer, they should just off away from there. Argalia told her that they were in a hurry. He then told Pluto to do his job. Pluto then used his power to fix the damage to the front door. Angela asked if that was a singularity, while witnessing this. Pluto thought that was a ridiculous idea. Oswald considered it magic! Pluto sees the reverberation ensemble as truth seekers and artists perched on the boundary as they search for an answer. Angela asked how they weren't taken over by the distortion. Greta sees it as to eat or be eaten. We're walking a fine line at the crossroads. Roughly translated, that means they might not be mindless beasts, but the distortion doesn't bring out the best in those that are inflicted by it. Or rather, affected by it. Well, however you want to put it, it doesn't bring out the best in them. Elena noted that Angela was fully human. She wasn't so pale anymore. She could tell that Angela's soft flesh had blood under it. She wanted to eat her blood vessels. Greta wanted to cook it first. Or rather cook them first. Oh yes, the special pasta. And Elena was salivating at that thought. Angela told them that she would rather not know that. And to be honest, I didn't need to know that either. Roland asked them what their business there was, as they burst in uninvited. Philip told him that the answer they seek was in the library. Oswald told him that they wanted to snatch that book with their forky tongue. Pluto was aware that the volume was nearing completion. Angela understood that they were talking about the one book. She was not intending to give it away. Argalia wasn't asking for permission either. He then recognized Roland and greeted him. It was a while since they chatted in peace. Roland was silent, clearly having nothing to say to him. Or at least nothing he wanted to say to him. Argalia considered this silence heartless, as he had good news for him too. They brought someone that he wanted to meet so dearly. This surprised Roland. Argalia didn't want her to meet him again, comparing their marriage between a beautiful rose and a rabid beast. Argalia, he's not that bad. He's just an hole. He considered a love story that ends with the lovers never getting to see each other again as too tragic. So he decided to take her with them. Roland wanted to know what he was talking about. Jae-heon then recognized Roland and greeted him, although Roland didn't recognize him. That's understandable, as he didn't look like that last time they met. Apparently, she wouldn't shut up about him. She, being Angelica, who returned to him in puppet form. Jae-heon mockingly said that he was at a loss of words by the reunion of his dreams. Yeah, he was lost for words, just not for the reason you're making it out, as the sight of this angered Roland, asking what they were trying to pull. Jae-heon continued to mock him, stating that he was mesmerized by her polished-up beauty. Roland understood that Argalia ordered this defiling of his own sister, who was apparently aware of all that was happening inside her puppet's form. This enraged the Black Silence, He struck at the blue sicko, who blocked his attack. Argalia made fun of him by saying how intimidating he was, and what was the problem as he's meeting his beloved Angelica once more, believing that it was falling in love at first sight for the second time, wanting to steal her away from him again. But he won't let this happen this time, believing that he didn't deserve her. He deserved better than having her life ruined by the likes of him. Argalia. Her life was ruined by the pianist. Also, he's at you ordering jae-heon turning her into a puppet, and the fact that you don't appear to feel anything that a sane person would feel when he looks at the mess that Angelica was made out of. Argalia continued to say that he was dazzled by her beauty. And for this, Roland made it clear that he wasn't dazzled by her beauty. But he did want to make a decision. And that decision was to not give Argalia the mercy of a quick death. He is going to pulverize his body until he makes what's left after the red mist killed her targets seem coarsely ground. Argalia sees Roland as still bound to the past and blind to the present, seeing him as a fool, wanting him to look into the future like he does. A future full of insanity? Sorry, but I think you're confusing Roland for someone who has something to lose. That and Roland is still sane. Argalia complained that Roland's ingratitude towards the work that jae-heon did on Angelica. This work involved him finding her corpse within the piano. And Elena helped by extracting the blood out of the piles of rotting corpses that used to belong to Angelica, the corpses that made up the piano of the pianist. Angela asked about that. This made Argalia laugh madly. Anyone else thinking that he's a joker? I certainly do. He's certainly about as barking as him. He asked if it was too early to reveal that, apparently knowing of Roland's plan, likely from Yuri. Hard to know who was using who at this point. Angela then asked about the pianist again. Bremen then made noises that sounded like, well, does she not see what's right in front of her? Greta found her apparent ignorance amusing. Oswald considered the show to be spicier than he thought. Argalia was trying to hold in the laughter, holding back the tears after hearing what the naive, moronic heap of scrap didn't seem to know. She was the one who killed that black-hearted, undeserved better half, and his sister. Okay, that's unfair on Roland, as he's not that bad. Although he's not a nice man, let's be honest. As for undeserved, by what standard? This amused Pluto as well. Tanya even saying that the white nights and dark days were what caused the distortion, which made the pianist. And Elena told Angela that she was responsible for the white nights and dark days. Philip could see the relationship between those events. Eileen mocked her for being blind to the truth. Roland told them to cut it out. Why are you defending her? Or is that because you're seeing that they're going too far? Jae-heon noted how calm he was, expecting a furious fit. Well, that's because he's already learned about that from the others. Tanya then referred to him as a rabid psycho that tore through syndicates and offices that ran suspicious experiments. Tanya, if he's a rabid psycho, what would that make you? Eileen spoke of how his blind rampage affected them as well, likely referring to him killing her father. Jae-heon also mentioned how he wanted to bring his son back to life, who died in an unfortunate accident, which had nothing to do with Angelica's death. And yet, even after explaining that to him, he killed his son in cold blood anyway. Seeing Roland as devoid of mercy, Roland then remembered that place. It had a terrible stench. He admitted that Jae-heon was more skillful with his disgusting methods since they last met. Jae-heon went on to say that no singularity could save his son in that abysmal state. Not even Arcorp singularity? To create a new body? Apparently, his son was playing in a spot outside of Jae-heon's field of vision. And then a road roller was making way for gentrification in a backstreet redevelopment site. So there are roads, vehicles, and redevelopment to at least stop the backstreets from falling into complete decay. He was at work that day, and that led to his son's death. I assume that he's either divorced or his wife was killed by one of the many hazards of the backstreets. He would have given everything he had to undo that mistake. And Roland killed his son when the revival was almost complete. Roland considered it debatable that what he made was his son, as he saw it as an abomination made with the flesh of random people weaved together. Jae-heon didn't see that, nor did he see Roland as the final judge of the worth of any of their methods, as, at least at the beginning, he never did any harm to him. He used bodies of children who were killed in the night, those that would have been eaten by the sweepers anyway. Either that or the backstreet butchers, or... well, he saw the parents of those children as the ones that should hold him to account, not Roland. He had no right to kill his son, who was about to live again, or to judge him for his actions. After that, he wanted Roland to suffer as he did, along with the world. Jae-heon, that's going beyond simple vengeance. For a start, he saw no distinction. Well, if there is a distinction, it's not much, between Nest Dweller and Backstreet Winner in the first class section of the warp train. Are you any better in lecturing him about dispensing suffering and retribution? You speak of there being no justification for a maniac who was lashing out at blameless people to kill his son. But not all of those he killed were blameless. Eileen's father and the syndicate thugs, they had it coming. Jae-heon then talks about him awaking the distortion in him, likely sometime after his son was killed, which left him confused, at least to begin with. His thoughts were all over the place. He then found, or was found by Argalia, and he followed him to this point. Roland then said, "That's that and this is this," or roughly translated, "That's your problem, I've got my own." That's whatever he went through, he shouldn't have with his dead wife. As now, you've made it personal. He doesn't give a about his past anymore, or even if he was the reason for Jae-heon's suffering. But then he had so much rage that he was unable to speak. Angela told him to calm down. Disturbed by his state of pure rage, noting that this wasn't like him, Roland told her that she has the wrong impression. Argalia found this amusing. He wasn't there for vengeance like the man with a heart of coal. Says the one who turned his own sister into what I can only describe as gender-bent Pinocchio. Argalia was actually thankful of her. Greta told her that she gave them the power to get there. Eileen thanked her for opening the path to reach salvation. Argalia wanted the light to illuminate the city with beauty that exceeds the pianist. Oh, so you want to do what Adam, the version of Ian that was as barking as you, wanted to do? Turn everyone into distortions, so that none would forget them. She had his deepest gratitude. Jae-heon thanked her for the opportunity to shake Roland up as he desired, thanks to her ignorance. Oswald was eager to see what happens next with googly eyes, but they'll have to miss out on that, sadly. Argalia told them to get ready. The song of the city was approaching its coda, and they have their stories to keep. Bremen said something like, well, I imagine he says something like, "You got it? Let's these hacks up!" Angela wanted to say something, but Roland told her not to, as he understands that the higher priority was stopping Argalia and his reverberation ensemble. They can deal with that issue between them after. The Quip-Off, otherwise known as the Tree of Death. It's the antithesis of the Sephiroth, of the Tree of Life, at least according to Kabbalah. The empty husks of holy sparks, said to have been cast down after Adam and Eve ate from the Tree of Knowledge, and as a consequence were cast out of the Garden of Eden. These are the manifestations of darkness and the chaos that existed before the light came, as in, let there be. They are also representations of evil, which can manifest themselves in a number of forms, from natural disasters to inanimate objects, even unnatural creatures. Well, that last one is certainly relevant to the reverberation ensemble. This is the point of no return. Before this reception starts, the library can prepare for it. But once it starts, it has to be completed, and each of the patron librarians will need to fight their antitheses. The first of the reverberation ensemble to be fought was Philip, the Crying Children. He was once a grade 5 fixer who was part of the Dawn Office, a Liu Association affiliate, who worked for the Smoke War veteran Salvador, who preferred to believe what he wanted to believe, rather than to make sure. This led to his downfall after he not only ran away after both Salvador and his xianbei, Yuna, died, but he got the Wedge Office killed as well. But after that, he manifested a partial EGO when he decided to continue fighting. Then he was teleported due to a teleportation device that Oscar, the operator of the Wedge Office, slipped on him, which resulted in him appearing right in the middle of the 8 o'clock circus, and got driven insane by both Oswald and Pluto. They turned him into the distortion The Crying Children, a winged, waxy, burning angel of death, who upon escaping devastated V-Corp's nest, he was subdued by Liu Association South Section 1, but was saved by Argalia, Pluto, and Oswald, who made him into the form that he was now. And after contributing to containing, or at least trying to, the Purple Tear, along with the others, the reverberation ensemble broke into the library. Philip was silent as he waited for his opponent on the floor of history. Malkuth then greeted him. He remained silent. She asked if he was going to say anything, and he failed to see the point in that. She asked if it was due to holding a grudge because he believed that they took everything from him. He hinted that it might be so. Although, to be honest, he'd probably find some excuse for that. It didn't need to be the library. Although Malkuth didn't see that as certain, as Philip didn't seem so sure. Apparently, Philip only had remnants and feelings in him. Well, remnants of feelings and memories, rather, where he either forgot them or lost them, and they're becoming more dull over time. It's possible that he lost most of them, as only one cherub escaped in his last battle in the library. Either that or it was a byproduct of his distortion. While who he used to be would have gotten upset and sad over what he remembered, unable to let go, now he's just there for the performance that would distort everyone in the city. He will not be holding back against them. Not at all. All he wants is delight. Malkuth asked if he felt that he lost something important. He sees that happiness taken away doesn't mean that sadness should fill it. He doesn't feel unhappy. He's returned to a past state before emotional emotional realization, before he was miserable. Malkuth asks if he has to be devoid of emotions and memories. Well, if he has to be devoid of those, what's left of him? Philip told her he had nothing, no sad feelings or anything, asking why people are taught that they need to earn things like jobs, assets, friends, family, knowledge, wealth. That lives are successful and contentful if they have these things. Nothing lasts forever. What we guess will be taken away eventually. That eventually people try and fail to latch onto them. They despair and lament, like he did. Yeah. Distortion has turned Philip into a straw nihilist. He asked if relationships between people really matter. They all break in the end, sooner or later. Yeah, Philip's social skills were probably mostly stripped away as well, along with his memories and emotions. He then asked if a person can be themselves and walk down the path chosen by themselves without anyone pointing them in that direction. While that person would be a nobody in appearance, they'd ultimately gain more, at least as far as Philip is concerned. Malkuth understood, as she had the same fear. But she considered that without such emotions they can't move forward. In fact, they might as well be dead. A lesson learned from pain in difficult and trying times. Well, that's her view of it, but Philip didn't really know about that. But he didn't think that she was the one to lecture him about it, even if it was true. A bold thing to say after taking the lives of the people around him. This shook Malkuth. However, Philip wasn't vengeful. He just wanted a free life without being chained to anything. He's just tired of worrying about taking flack for anything he did. Malkuth has no more arguments, as she doesn't have a clear conscience about what she's been doing. But she did know that they must fight, and so they got on with it. Philip, you have no idea that you've been chained to a much more twisted master in the form of our guardian. And the worst part of it was you're not even aware of it. He represents Quemrote. Sorry if I butcher the pronunciation. I'm someone who still struggles with English. Or materialism. He cares, at this point, about nothing but the material universe. Due to multiple battles against the library, being worn down after each one, the suffering convincing him to retreat back into himself, where he saw no need to become better, but to only care about himself without giving a about others. Malkuth is his antithesis, as she eventually became more honest about herself. This was after she experimented on herself as Elia, recklessly. Yes, her first life that led to her dying. While Philip preferred to cut and run, deluding himself into believing that it's everyone's fault but his, due to the regret that he bore, although deep down he wanted to end it, as he kept shutting his senses to create the illusion of happiness, believing that his pain had been overcome and he'd become tougher. Unfortunately, he realized that disorder was one thing that he couldn't deal with. He considered it better not to think about it. Not to think that he's in control of his life. So he sided with the Reverberation Ensemble in order to be happy, or at least find a way to be. Not that he succeeded. It only made his suffering worse. Torments that he's had a part in. Although it wouldn't change his decision, well, the one that he made in the past. He was actually thankful and grateful that he didn't drown in his own tears and sorrow. As for how he forced Malkuth and the patron librarians, this is a combination of all of his previous battles. He also has unspeaking children to assist him in battle. As for how he attacked, his attacks carried over from each of his battles, although they're much more powerful than they were last time they were used, now that his distorted form is refined. While burn can make him harder hitting, it can also make him weak to being staggered, something that Malkuth and her librarians exploited. He was also weakened by the death of each of his unspeaking children. Well, a good thing that the Liu Association and Zhao were fought and defeated. They've certainly got a few methods to set things on fire. Next we have Eileen, the leader of the Church of Gears. Her story started when her father was killed by Roland, the Black Silence. After that, she became the leader of a nihilist cult known as the Church of Gears, which, unlike many religions in the city, actually believe what they said. Specifically that they should embrace their roles as gears and feel happy about it. Yeah, a cult of straw nihilists, as nothing else mattered to them, except that. Then the Full Stop office tried to assassinate her with expensive firearms, on the orders of the Shi Association South Section 2, which was foiled by Argalia. And after spending some time with Pluto, she distorted and devotingly followed Argalia to the slow, agonizing death of the corrupt manager of the southern branch of the Shi Association, Velma, to the cannibalistic smiling faces, to the squatter slaughter within what was left of the outskirts lab where Garian and Kali fought each other to the death. Then we move on to confronting the Purple Tear along with the rest of the ensemble, and now we're up to date. Eileen, upon arriving on the floor of technological sciences, noted the sound of gears turning there. Yasud then appeared to greet her. She greeted back and told her followers to do the same. Yasud was silent during this. And then Eileen didn't consider the sound of gears from that floor to be graceful. Yet the sound of intermesh gears was a pleasure to hear regardless. Yasud found it irritating at times. Some of them didn't mesh well and made a loud noise. Eileen agreed that they didn't sound happy, yet they transmitted a larger force with their struggle. She asked if he was a similar being to them. He doubted that, as the gears there weren't exactly like hers. Eileen then preached her nihilist drivel and says that he's denying the gears. He should admit that he's a cogwheel and rotate according to his purpose. She can help him with that. Okay, if you don't believe that she believes her own propaganda by now, where the were you? Yesod told her that he's found his purpose and he's doing fine. Yeah, we know that you're too polite to tell her to go herself. Fair enough. That's how you work. Eileen doesn't see it as right to spin alone. Her father led her to Argalia, her saviour, as a gear. She believed that Yesod can be a gear and rotate according to his purpose. Yesod followed no one's commands. Well, except Angela. And even then, it's until the end. He's not a fine... he's not a blind faith bloke. He is not fine with what she's preaching. Eileen then noticed his sorrowful face, that he hasn't found an answer to his pain and suffering. She felt that as well. Becoming a gear would fill his life with bliss rather than pain. Okay, what's your definition of bliss? Being brutally butchered and turned into an inanimate object? She saw him as no different from those people that she butchered, telling him to cease his suffering and accept the gear to walk the path of the gears. Where does she come up with this? Was her father like this? Or was she just driven insane after her father was killed? Yesod was unconvinced. He sees her as someone as believing that she knows him. He put the past behind him long ago. He couldn't let his emotions blur his rationality, as that would prevent him from acting with discretion. Eileen wasn't deterred by this. She still preached at him, asking him if they didn't look so blissful. A gear with a purpose is content, for its rotation has meaning. The cogs that are the machination of the city are turned by someone, so that the city can run correctly. Not even Neshak would believe that drivel, and he's averse to the condition known as sobriety. She sees Argalia as a guide for the right path, those who can't do anything on their own can be guided by him. More like you don't want to. Well, Yesod was unamused by the zealot's praising of Argalia as if he was the Messiah. She gave him what might be his last chance to join them. He refused, as he's gone too far on that journey to become a gear. This disheartened her, knowing that many gears were wasted within the library. Much hardship had been gone through. He denied the gears, and many gears were robbed of the opportunity to cycle the right way. But The ones that were with her would make up for those lost. Yesod simply stated that it was the path he chose, looking ahead rather than being bound to the past. He feels sorry for those that died here, but he intends to finish what he started. Sentiment be damned. She sees them as gears that no longer rotate justly. She mistook him for a kindred component, but he renounced the gears. Well, Elaine, he can't renounce what he was never a part of to begin with. She warned him that he'll break down someday. Yesod then wanted to just get on with the battle. She agreed with this.
She represents Ayaspus, or instability, as in what she believed she could have been without her nihilist cult and her beliefs, without the Church of Gears. That, and due to her devotion to the agent of chaos that is Argalia, along with her gears, her faith in the gears themselves resulted in blind obedience to him, believing that she and the rest of the city are incapable of doing anything on their own. The people always find something to follow. You don't have a monopoly on that. The fingers alone are proof of that. Well, certainly the index. Basically, when all of her followers are dead, she's incapable of doing anything. Her antithesis is Yesod. He was the most openly rebellious of Angela's plans and even supported Roland's approach to dealing with Angela regarding questioning the methods that they used. Certainly, questioning the methods that led to Angela resonating with the library and opening up with her emotional baggage. It wasn't the first time that he dealt with that. As the separate of the information department in the Botany Corporation, it took much for him to open up to others, while showing contempt and disdain initially. Eileen, on the other hand, doesn't question why she provides the need for people to escape their lives by becoming gears. Some as monstrosities known as meat gears, some grafted to her head to augment her. She mostly has her meat gears do her dirty work. And she was saved by Argalia and Pluto, not following a path of her own. Both were driven down the paths that they still follow due to the deaths of others. In Yesod's case, as Gabriel, it was due to Elia's death, while in Eileen's case, it was due to Roland killing her father. Although in the latter case, he did so for good reasons, as her father was abducting people indiscriminately. Eileen believed that there was nothing that could be achieved of their own will. There was a flow that they couldn't go against, which dictated them. The gears were there to show the flow, which can't be seen, and its origin is unknown, but she believed that they must follow it, believing that it never leads to bad places, seeing as even thinking that a bad place exists is an act of defiance. Yeah, to question is to rebel. Their only desire is to watch as bystanders, seeing the path that they walk as not their own, believing that volition is a delusion. Certainly for those that haven't strayed from salvation. Yeah, blind faith has caused many a disaster, or at least has helped to cause one, as it did in this case. She and her meat gears, her followers, use smoke attacks, something that Yesud can protect himself and the others with a certain ability. Eileen is strongest with her followers, although once they're cleared away, she is incapacitated, as without them, she is nothing. Although she can hit everyone hard, if provoked. Next we have Greta, the last surviving member of the 8 chefs. Now, she was already a psychotic individual before she distorted, due to being one of the 8 chefs, who were all cannibals. According to the Hana Association, they preferred full-course meals to buffets. Although it's unclear if it was because of Argalia that she distorted, or whether the action she took was what attracted his attention. So either before she distorted or after. Although it's also unclear if she was the one who killed them, or something else did. But one thing is certain is the other 7 are dead. They were all cooked and made into a buffet. And Greta joined the Reverberation Ensemble, seeking to make new and exciting flavours. She wanted to cook the thumb corpses that were given the Vlad the Impaler treatment by the Index. She also wanted to cook the Purple Tear before she escaped into the library. She even wanted to cook Angela. Upon hearing that Elena wanted her special pasta, as in her veins. Yeah, even she has standards, as she wouldn't let anyone eat those that are killed raw. Her distortion form is, well, shark-like, with multiple mouths, which is fitting as carnivorous sharks are cannibals as well. And they also go crazy when they smell blood. Upon arrival within the floor of literature, Greta was picking up a quirky smell, the scent of a nice sauce. Oh, please let it end. Hode greeted Greta, the latter confusing her for a chef. Hode made it clear that although she's the equivalent of one, they are not in a restaurant. They are certainly not in District 23. Greta had an order from Argalia. Then Hode commented on her white skin, as her name would suggest. Hode, she's an anthropomorphic shark. She's a mix of white and grey. Hode heard from the others what happened to the rest of the 8 chefs. Greta considered them cretins. Apparently those morons decided to cook their own bodies, much to Hode's confusion. Yeah, it's self-catering taken too far. All that was left are their teeth and tongues. Their digestive systems were boiled in a stew. Their brains turned into steaks. Are you sure that there was enough in their heads to make a burger, never mind a steak? Yeah. Greta didn't kill them. They killed themselves. Hode was sorry that Greta was the only survivor, the only one that had any degree of sanity. Well, enough to see that cooking yourself, to that extent, was stupid. Greta didn't regret it. They were satisfied. How you cook doesn't matter. It's the end result being a treat that does.
Ingredients don't matter, the taste does. Well, Hode can't really argue with that. Well, Greta didn't like snobs that were picky and inflexible about ingredients. And Hode's silence told Greta that she was one of them. Hode didn't have time to debate that they might as well not consume anything when arguing about what they can and cannot eat. Well, Hode didn't consider cannibalism to be her taste. Greta didn't understand, as if it tastes good, it's found and eaten. What's there to think about? The smell in the air tells that it's fresh. It's a predator smelling the blood in the current. Although delicious ingredients are hard to come by now. Hode wanted to know more about that as, Greta told her of there being enough food for all to feast on, but they prefer their meals to be luxurious. Greta sees that those that eat more than 3 meals a day deprived another of a meal. And those deprived fight over what little they have just to sate their hunger. Those that lose that battle are just rodents feeding on scraps. The ingredients, as in humans, are either a bunch of fat who eat too much or those with barely anything on them. This reflects what is cooked. Well, reflects on what is cooked, rather. Argadia wanted to make sure that pure and clean ingredients are plentiful. Well, so he says. Greta wants better. Hode thought about this, and she didn't believe that anyone in the city could say that they've done the right thing. Well, it's par for the course for a morally ambiguous society. They do what they can, and in this case, it means that Hode will need to stop Greta. Greta, on the other hand, focused on what sauce would go well with them. She represents greed, or chemda, not for personal power or material wealth, but because of her desire for cooking high-standard dishes from people, which is why when the other 7 of the 8 chefs died and she joined the Reverberation Ensemble, she had an altogether more twisted interpretation of life without pain has no meaning, as she sees her meals having better taste as she inflicts as much suffering to her victims as possible before they die. To turn impure trash into pure and clean ingredients. She certainly has her fun with cooking, and that's all that matters to her. Incapable of remorse, believing them to be happy, that she was the one to make them into the best that she can make, and continue her high standards. Hode is her antithesis. They both betrayed those that they were a part of. Although while as Michelle, Hode hung herself due to the guilt of being an informant of the Eye that led to the massacre in the outskirts lab that got Garion and Callie killed. And then as Hode, eventually wanting to be better after realizing that forcing a good person image won't make people forgive her, and she won't be able to forgive herself. Well, she was able to do this by sincerely helping others. Greta, on the other hand, actively made people suffer just for making the dishes taste better. As for Greta's perspective, she sees humans being dominated by the act of consumption. Hunger brings annoyance. Starvation turns people violent. Well, Lenin did say that any society is 3 meals away from chaos, and that's considering what happened in Russia at that time. along with the French Revolution before it. She sees it as how humans are. Those that eat the same food grow similar, not seeing how some can determine what's the correct or incorrect food. The latter can be defined as eating people. Well, that's usually the case with the humans in the city, except for within the back streets of District 23, and others that are a bit too open-minded with what they eat, and not just in the nest, who do this out of boredom. She fails to see how life is precious, the reason why many see cannibalism as wrong. She doesn't care about philosophy, she just cares about being an apex predator. It's eat or be eaten. Yes, she is an apex predator, but with enough afflicted on her, she can be taken down. Hode certainly understood that. She understood shark behavior, so she ensured that Greta bled, although she would still be devastating when she's near death, so the literature team would need to hit her hard in order to defeat her, as she will eat her fresh meat and attack with her meat tenderizer. But it doesn't matter what you're armed with as an anthropomorphic shark. It would all be in vain for her. She would be taken down. Now we have Woof, jae-heon, and Doodle, the musicians of Bremen. There's not that much to say about this amalgamation of crazy musicians. They were driven insane with a fanatical obsession with the pianist. Well, those that weren't killed by his performance. They were later joined by Meow, Moo, and Oink, that last one being a former Seven Association affiliate. But sometime after, the founders of the Musicians of Bremen were invited to join the Reverberation Ensemble, and left the others to their own devices, at least until they entered the library. Then, possibly with Pluto's help, these three musicians were distorted into a three-headed being that communicated with animal noises. They were seen during their encounter with the Index, and when they and the others confronted the Purple Tear. Well, we know what happened after, don't we? I'm going to guess at what Bremen was saying, so bear with me here. When Bremen arrived on the floor of art, they said, "Hey, we're here to perform, so either get the out of our way, or we'll you up." Nejak was silent, not understanding what they were saying. More noises were coming from Bremen, which could mean, "What, got nothing to say?" Nejak made it clear that he'd want to ask something if he could understand them. He asked if they could understand him. They made noises that might be considered, "Of course we can! Ask away!" Nejak was wondering a couple of things, that if being that fused abomination that can't speak Korean, never mind any other human language, was the form of art they wanted, were they willing to go that far to live? Bremen asked, "What are you getting at?" Nejak told them that he'd tell them and those that see self-immolation and other things as part of their art. Stop doing that, even though he understands why they do that. Art narrows vision. It stops those that want to practice it from caring about what's around them. An occupational hazard that the craft is indulged in, not realizing that you're throwing yourself and your surroundings into the fire that was started by them. Apparently it's how humans live. This made Bremen make noises that probably said, "Are you an artist then?" Nezak said if he could get another chance at life, he'd get into art as a free spirit. If he got a chance to do that, and had the courage to do so. He asked them if they had an opportunity like that to do so, even if it resulted in them being a twisted creature. This made Bremen make offended noises, saying, "Hey, don't talk to us like you're a therapist. We have no regrets with what we do. If our art flourishes, who gives a..." Nezak told them to calm down as his head was hurting due to their noises. He's not happy with the art that them and the Reverberation Ensemble were trying to make. He could tell them to stop, but he can't, as he understands why they want to do this. He can't pick apart their way of art, as he's not proud of his, as in what he did in the past, as in what he did in the Botany Corporation. So they'll need to face each other in battle. Bremen made noises which translated to, "Then stop squawking or whatever you called it and start fighting!" Nezak agreed. They represent lust or shaka, due to how they feel about what they do. Their hedonism turned them into the many-headed horror they are now, ditching the other musicians to throw their lot with the Reverberation Ensemble. Nezak is the antithesis of this, as he doesn't believe that art should be pursued at any cost. He found a reason to continue living and move on from his past, even though he's still a substance-abusing junkie, at least somewhat, certainly with alcohol. He's also the least supportive of Angela's methods of gathering books, while the musicians of Bremen kill people for their art, as in making musical instruments from them, due to the insanity-inducing music of the pianist, making them create a tribute act. They both joined a group dedicated to those that they idolized. In the case of the musicians of Bremen, it was the pianist. In the case of Giovanni, it was Carmen. Both of them died. The former because of Roland, the Black Silence, and for good reasons. The latter because she killed herself due to Enoch's death pushing her over the edge, while Giovanni voluntarily and for selfless reasons allowed Ian to experiment on his body, involving cogito, in the it was false hope for a cure that motivated him, although he didn't know it was false at the time. Giovanni. The musicians of Bremen, on the other hand, merged their bodies for selfish reasons, becoming a distortion that few can understand. And that's just as far as communication is concerned. As for how they saw things, it was all one big adventure to them in a world that changes with every step, as do they change. Colourful light in their eyes, pursuing things most don't understand, as most feel joy from common things, nasty pleasures. They look for what they're lacking without any complete satisfaction, as that satisfaction will never come. They seek grander debauchery, yet they're happy to walk this path. They're addicted to this feeling, and we know how addiction ends, don't we? Now, during battle, there are 3 heads that exist, so when staggering occurs each time, Nezhak understood to hit Bremen with everything he had, along with the others. Once all 3 were down, Bremen would enter a berserk state and try a now or never attack. After it was withstood, the arts team were able to finish them off. And this was even though Bremen had the assistance of a couple of puppets, a gear worshipper, and Miss Mermaid. Or was it Mrs. Mermaid? Well, the mermaid that Oswald made. One that stayed on land because the ocean was full of predators. That's the ASEAN layer done. There's still 2 more to go, with 6 of the remaining Reverberation Ensemble members to take care of. That will have to wait until the next video. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!